Are you using ACES in DaVinci Resolve? In this tutorial, I want to show you what the impact is for Fusion and how you use it correctly with the Fusion tab in DaVinci Resolve. This is the third tutorial in a small mini-series about using linear workflow in Fusion. So I previously discussed what linear workflow is, how you do it manually, why it's important in Fusion. So you may want to look back at this tutorial if you have some doubts about the basics. Then I discussed linear workflow with DaVinci Resolve color management, which is kind of similar, but now it's about ACES, and there are again a few little tricks and tips to pay attention to, so let's have a look. I'm looking at DaVinci Resolve with nothing enabled right now. I have log footage here and a photograph here, and let's see if I turn on ACES. Then in the project settings, color management, I have ACES CC and CCT. So these are two flavors of ACES. Now, often people say ACES is like a linear color space. Well, ACES is more like a methodology for color management, which includes specifications for different things and different color spaces, so to speak. So in this case, we are talking about different logarithmic curves which are used for color grading. So ACES CC is a pure logarithmic curve, and CCT has an adjustment in the shadows, which some colorists prefer. This has really nothing much to do with Fusion, just to be aware these are different gamma curves, so to speak, or different luminance adjustments on an ACES color space. Now, what is more important for us now is that independent of what you choose here, we have our input and output transform. So for me, I have now as an output device transform sRGB. For my monitor, of course, maybe you have Rec. 709. That's fine. And then input device transform, I have none, because you can set a default here, but it can get overridden by the camera settings or manually. So in this case, you see something terrible happened. So I can right click here and set my input transform manually, ACES input transform. Let me set this to Alexa. This is an Arri Alexa camera, and well, now it seems to be picking it up correctly. And here on this one, so this is a photograph sRGB, and let me see if this was recognized correctly. Probably not. So in this case, I would just select, okay, I probably selected it earlier, so sRGB for the input transform for the photograph. All right, so this is just a reminder. If you're working with ACES, you are familiar with this. So let me go over into Fusion and see what's happening. And if everything is managed nicely automatically, I should see the same image that I see on the edit page now in my Fusion viewer. And as you may guess, this may not be 100% the case. Now, this looks pretty good, but if you did a side-by-side comparison, take a screenshot, compare with the edit, you would see some minor differences. But before I get to this, let's see what's happening. So first of all, Fusion is working in linear space and then applies a Managed View LUT for the viewer, so that what we see looks nice. If I disable the View LUT, everything looks dark because we are working in linear space. That's fine. Linear refers to the gamma function, so to the brightness adjustment. So in the color page, you have this ACES CC, CCT. In the output viewer, we have our Rec. 709 from the output transform. In Fusion, we have linear, which if we don't apply anything, looks very dark. That's fine. But besides the gamma, we have to worry about the gamut as well, so about the chromaticities. And here they don't change. We only need to know what they are. And if we are working with ACES, that means that our chromaticities, while we are in Resolve, are following what is called ACES AP1 color space. Now, the thing is, you will not necessarily find it under this name, but in Fusion, you would find it under the name ACES CG. ACES CG basically means use the default AP1 color space, which is used in edit color grading typically, but then do not apply any gamma correction. So if you have those two components, so the same primaries or the same gamut, no gamma correction, then you have a space which is often called ACES CG. I can show you a transform manually. So in Resolve you have the ACES transform tool. This is a Resolve effect. It is not available in Fusion Studio, only in DaVinci Resolve. It's a Resolve FX effect. This is available in the color page or also in Fusion, ACES transform. And here, if I want to mimic my ACES output transform, I would select here ACES CG in Fusion, which is again the same as ACES CCT or ACES CC, but without the logarithmic adjustment. So same gamut, different gamma, no gamma, so linear, in this case ACES CG. And then output, I could go again to Rec 709, for example, and if I bring this into the viewer, then I have actually applied the exact same output transform that DaVinci Resolve is applying in the edit page, right? So this is now the official ACES output transform that Resolve is using. Now the thing is, let me show you now side by side how this looks and how my media in without this transform looks if I have my Managed View LUT enabled, and you see there's a difference. So on the left side we have what is actually happening on the edit page, for example, how this is actually looking on the edit page. On the right side I have my Managed View LUT. My Managed View LUT is not applying the ACES output transform. So that's a little bit an issue with this. So I can go here into edit, and for reasons that I don't understand, I always get this Fusion View LUT here, and I can remove it, but the Managed View LUT is there as well. So, and this one takes the source space, which is ACES CG, and there's no gamma, so this has no impact, and goes from this source space to sRGB and adds a gamma. Now this sRGB is the normal sRGB definition from the gamut tool in Fusion. This is not the ACES output transform. The ACES output transform, even if you set it to sRGB, so I could change that here to sRGB, even then you would see a difference. And the reason is that in this output transform, it's not only applying this sRGB, but there is, as part of the ACES specification, there's an additional contrast curve basically being applied. I don't know the exact reasons. I'm not a colorist thinking about this day and night, but just keep in mind this is different. So the ACES transform is different from this gamut transform. Now, what do we do? Well, either we accept it for Fusion and, just live with it, or what we could do is we could just use this ACES transform node, for example, add it at the end. That would be a very simple solution. Just add it at the end, make sure our View LUT is turned off, and then we can do our compositing, and everything that we look at from this node will always appear the right way. So that's at least a very simple, straightforward workaround to getting the same that we are having on the edit page. And I think for many people, this will be sufficient as a workaround. There is a more sophisticated workaround, but once I show it to you, I'm not sure you really want to do it anymore, but let me show it to you anyways. So I can, let me go back to my Managed View LUT here. I can disable my Managed View LUT. There's the first problem. If I just here, I can't disable it, so this button is not working. Don't ask me why, probably a bug, I would say. I can delete it here, but you see nothing happened. It's gone here, but it's still applied here, so that was bad. I think that's a bug as well. If I enable it again, it comes 2 times, so don't ask me why this is happening. I noticed there seems to be some difference between here and between going here into the LUT menu. So here, now I can delete one and it's actually gone, and maybe delete this other one as well, this Fusion View LUT, but this one I cannot delete. I don't know why, but I can't delete it. But I can make it basically useless by removing this and saying no change. So this way my transform is no longer doing anything. So my managed view LUT is still there, but it's not doing anything. And then I would have to manually do the correct transform in my view LUT if I want to fix this or align it with the output transform. To do this, I can only use, I do not have this tool available, unfortunately, here, this ACES transform node. This is not available here in the in the tools available for the view LUT, unfortunately. I tried to bring it in via some macros and so on. I was not successful. So the only other workaround I am aware of, and let me know if you find something else, but the workaround I'm aware of is only via the OCIO color space view LUT. Now OCIO is basically independent system for managing color spaces, for color management. It's not a Fusion or Resolve thing. It's an open system that is also available in other software that is used in VFX pipelines often. But it is there. However, you need to get the official config files for ACES, which are not there in the default. I can give you the link in the tutorial description. So basically you need an OCIO config file for ACES, for the version of ACES that you're using. So here I have for ACES 1.03, I have this config file. I downloaded this earlier, have installed this, and once I select this and have the correct config file loaded, the default will not work, so you will need the correct config file. Then I can select the source space, and I can select here ACES CG as the source space, and then the output space. I can now use the output transform, and you see here lots of different transforms, but it should be out for output, and then if you have Rec 709, for example, out Rec 709 should be the correct output transform. And well, oh, here I used sRGB. Let me compare with this. So let me use out sRGB, and now my modification with the managed view LUT disabled and this OCIO enabled, you see I am replicating what this ACES transform is doing. Now the downside, again, with these kind of manual adjustments to the managed view LUT and OCIO and so on, the downside is, first of all, you have to do this to every viewer. So you have 4 viewers in Fusion, maybe a 5th one if you use the clean feed output. So you have to do it on every viewer, and you have to do it every time you're opening a new Fusion composition. You can save this probably as a default, I think. So this OCIO color space view LUT, you can go to settings, save default, but I think this default may not save the file path, but at least the settings here. But the managed view LUT I mentioned in a video before, at least for me, I tried saving this as a default, even this disabling, and the next time I open a new Fusion comp, the default seems to be overwritten. So the default saving here doesn't seem to work here. So unfortunately, I'm not aware of a way to make this configuration in Fusion so that it works every time I open a Fusion comp. If you are a way, if you find a way, please let us know in the comment. It would probably help a lot of people. Either way, if you need to have your viewer really aligned with the edit page and replicate that output transform in the Fusion viewer, you could do it this way. The easier way is probably just to do this. Do you really need to replicate the output transform, or are you okay that your Fusion view LUT is slightly different? Again, Fusion, I do compositing where things need to make sense relatively, but my final delivery happens in the color page. So it's perhaps not the end of the world if I sometimes work without the correct transform here, but nonetheless, you should have a way to view it the same way you can view it in the edit page. Last thing, and this is the same as when it comes to Resolve Color Management. So both in ACES and in Resolve Color Management, your Managed View LUT keeps track of the color space. So I said here it's ACES CG. So if I have, here I have my, let me go to a second viewer where I have again my Managed View LUT. So here I have my Managed View LUT. Let me disable this one, look only at this, my Managed View LUT. And if I look at my subview metadata, and I should enable it, view enable, or press V, then you see here metadata, and you see here chromaticities. So unfortunately this is looking a bit too technical for my taste, but these chromaticities are basically, this is the mathematical definition of ACES CG, or of the AP1 primaries. Don't bother about the numbers, just keep in mind if you are creating anything directly in Fusion, let's say a background node or a noise or fast noise or anything, your text node, anything you're creating inside Fusion. I demonstrated it last week, so if I say create some orange background, this is being interpreted by the Managed View LUT, and you see it looks different. The orange here looks different than here, and this is because the View LUT is working on it. And the View LUT right now, you don't see any data here, but basically it interprets this as Rec 709 if there's nothing available, and applies the same transform that it's being transformed here, that is being applied on the media nodes, but this may not be the right thing. So if I merge this over, then suddenly, because of the merge, my color space information changes, so the metadata changes, and now the Managed View LUT looks at the same orange in a different way. So it's the same RGB value, so my background node didn't change, but the Managed View LUT gets different information in the metadata and looks at it in a different way. So from here to here you see a clear change, and that's because of this. And to avoid this, or to have it consistent, you can just go into the settings of your creator nodes, into the image settings, and say what color space this actually should be. And since we are working here in ACES, I would set this just to ACES CG. And once I set this, now if I go bring my background node in, here it even says ACES CG, and here it says it as a name. Here it says it in the form of mathematical values as they come from Resolve, but in both cases it's the same color space. And by switching from the background node to the merge, my Managed View LUT does not cause any alterations here. So same as with the Resolve Color Management in the other tutorial, once you turn on ACES, there are these things about the Managed View LUT to keep in mind. Your workflow itself isn't difficult. You don't really have to convert anything. You don't have to do anything. So the footage automatically ends up with linear gamma in Fusion. It automatically goes back to towards the color page as you process further. So there isn't anything you need to convert manually. You don't need to do anything. However, your Managed View LUT unfortunately has this default sRGB, which is not aligned with the ACES output transform. So your viewer looks different compared to the edit page. So either deal with it, or you have these workarounds. And then keep in mind anything that is coming being directly created inside Fusion will not have the ACES information as metadata, and this can be confusing because of the Managed View LUT, because the Managed View LUT keeps track of the color space information throughout your compositing flow. And if your footage is ACES CG, you probably want to stay in that methodology for all your work you're doing. All right, as you see, this Managed View LUT still has a few hiccups, some things which in my opinion could be improved, but it is workable. So These are the things I'm aware of. If you know of any other issues or any things how to make this simpler, please share with us in the comments. And thanks for watching. Take care.